Hi. In my last video, I was asking how can we end the devastation in Gaza? Because now tens of thousands of civilians have been killed, including mostly women and children, even though they had no part in any of the violence against Israel in the first place. And there's really nothing they can do because they are not going to be able to influence Hamas. So, most of the governments in the world are trying to influence Netanyahu and his government to try to get them to at least negotiate a ceasefire so that the Israeli hostages can be returned, and so that for at least a while then Gaza can regroup. So that would only be a sort of semi-solution, even if we could get that much, but even that much doesn't seem to be possible, given Netanyahu and this extreme right government. So then I was looking at the possibility of the parties in the government really standing back and asking themselves, do they want to be responsible for supporting the government that has done so much harm and created so much destruction in Gaza? And I understand, of course, how everybody feels, how the Israelis feel about what happened when Hamas invaded in October 7th last year. But it's gone on for far too long, and there has been far too much destruction and killing. So then that sort of led me to the idea of the religious parties in the government, because there are several religious parties in Netanyahu's government who are there because otherwise Netanyahu couldn't have created a coalition, a ruling coalition. That's the system that they have. And so surely religious parties would not want to be responsible for propping up a government that is failing to bring back the hostages and has no end in sight to the war in Gaza, and also has performed several provocative acts like assassinations in Iran, which could, and Lebanon, which could widen the war greatly. So I still think that is the best way. But the problem is the religious parties, they may not feel that they can take this step. Even though I do believe they have to think it would be the right step. But it's hard to challenge authority. And very likely the leaders of these smaller parties want to stay in the coalition because they want to have power in the government. And that's understandable. But is it worth tens of thousands of lives? So how can pressure be put upon the religious parties if simply appeal to conscience isn't going to be enough? And then that brings me actually to the only people who can influence the religious parties, and that is the women. So in Orthodox Judaism, women have very little say in what happens. They have almost total say in what happens in the home and with the children, but they have almost no say in like affairs of state, or they're not allowed even really to study the spiritual texts until they reach a certain age, I think age 40. And so they do not have a tradition of questioning their husband's authority. And this is part of the religion. So I'm just going to ask Orthodox women, is this what you want? Do you really believe that your only responsibility is to follow your husband and support him in making decisions that appear to you to be wrong. So if it just appears to you to be wrong, then I think you have the right to discuss it with your husband. But if you really believe it's wrong, and what is happening in Gaza is definitely wrong according to Jewish law, and according to any concept of a God or a deity that anybody might have, it can't be right to be killing tens of thousands of people, women and children primarily. So the question really becomes, what is your responsibility? Is it to support your husband unconditionally, or is it to follow God? Is it to follow what you know to be right in your heart and in your own being? And I would suggest that you can't follow somebody if you know that they are not following what is true. They're not following the law. They are not following the law of God. So I think the women are the only people who can actually really make a difference here. And I think it would be really, really good for Judaism, even Orthodox Judaism, if women claimed that they are adults and they have every bit as much right to make decisions and to evaluate decisions as their husbands. Because it's never been an accepted excuse that I did wrong because I was ordered to. People who've killed even Jewish people in the Holocaust, Germans who were part of the killing and the mass murder of Jews in the Holocaust, they weren't excused on the grounds of they were just following orders. So nobody has been excused on that grounds. It's an understandable situation, but it's not acceptable. So please, women, please, please, make your husbands really face the fact that they are not following their consciences, they're not following Jewish law, and they are not following God. Thank you.